relationship between emotion and thinking.
You know, we have five senses: seeing, touching, hearing, smelling, tasting. What all of them have in common is that they make you feel. You know, there is this particular syndrome, I don't know what it is, but it's when someone can't experience pain. And so sometimes these parents have this, have a child who can't experience pain. And so what these kids will do, they begin to bite their tongue. They begin to kind of take out their eyes, They do all sorts of crazy things to their bodies because they can't feel pain. And when you see what parents have done to these kids, it's like they put a mask on their face, they put gloves on their hands or fingers because they just try to protect these kids from harming themselves. So, and if you can't feel pain, nothing out there is dangerous. You're like a superhero. You will do anything and everything without giving it a second thought. Okay? So, what happens in these five senses is that your physical body gets placed in a physical environment. That environment has various forces. Okay? Some environments kind of have more forces on your visual, okay, than say the sense of touch or the sense of taste or smell. So depending on what the geography is, one sense is always more exposed, okay, than the others. But whatever the case may be, so these five senses give you experiences. They generate feelings. Feelings become either negative or they become positive. Negative as in not good, painful, distasteful. Positive as is it feels good, it gives me pleasure. Now, if you have an experience resulting in a feeling that is negative, your messiah-call thinking comes into place, saying, I didn't like that. I don't want to experience it again. Okay? So you will do whatever you can to never place your physical body in that particular environment. Okay? So if, for example, it is unpleasant, it is good for you to be fearful of putting your body in the same position that generated negative feelings. So unlike most people who say, well, why are you afraid? Get rid of the fear. Be free. It's the exact opposite. God or nature has given you this thing called fear, that you can be aware of it. And thinking comes in and says, okay, be careful. The flip side is also true. Your body is put in a place, okay? Certain feelings come about because of the experience, and you like those feelings. and then thinking comes about. And both the thinking in both categories are very political. You know, it's like what takes place in the Congress right now. Okay, they try to kind of figure out what to do to either get rid of the negative feelings, okay, or reinforce the positive feelings, make it happen again and again and again and again. The problem is not so much the thinking. The problem is I guess in some ways it could be because as you mature in life, your definition of negative and positive begin to change. You know, there comes a point where you say, just because something feels good, it doesn't mean I should pursue it and have it repeated. Just because something feels bad, it doesn't mean that I need to stop making it feel bad, because some things are actually good. Some bad feelings are actually good, you know. There comes a point where feelings, and the thing with feelings is that they're not very stable, they come and they go. What the dangerous part is when feeling turns into an emotion. Emotions are always historical. In other words, they have a history behind it, you know. You can kind of get over feelings very, very quickly, but when a feeling has turned into emotion and it lives inside you, okay, and it kind of guides and directs the way you think and act. When emotions turn into trauma, you know, you have to understand that thinking sees all these experiences as like a puzzle that he needs to fix, all these pieces that are all over the place, and he wants to somehow gather all these pieces and put them together. All the questions that people ask, for example, they see it as a puzzle. They have access to a couple of pieces, they want more pieces so that the question or the difficulties can make more sense to them. Okay. In some ways it becomes like a calculator, right? Trauma and thinking are very, 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 very different. Love and thinking are very, 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 I mean, these are just different beasts you're working with. You know, feeling bad about a math exam gone bad, but feeling and thinking about a love affair gone bad, these are very, very different things. You know, feeling about Bai Sahib is very different than feeling about Donald Trump, you know. So the first thing that you need to ask is, your feeling is connected to what exactly? Okay, because if you have a certain feeling, say about Trader Joe's, you don't need to go to the Bible or Daughter of Fire to begin to think about things. You know, if for example you're sitting and having a great time with your husband, that you're watching a great movie, you know, there is no reason for you, unless you're a little, you know, a little nutty, there is no reason to ruin what you guys have by thinking about the verse in the New Testament and then shoving it into your companion's face to make him feel bad about 2 hours having gone to waste. Maybe somewhere deep within you want to sabotage your relationship, I don't really know. You know, you rarely you think if you are in an experience that's giving you pleasure. You don't think. There is nothing to resolve, there is nothing to look for, there is nothing to solve. Because pleasure, it's very intoxicating. It brings you into the present moment. I mean, just having sat here for the past like 2-3 hours, there is no doubt that some of you got kind of bored, and maybe you're just tired, it's late at night, so you begin to wander off, going here, going there, thinking about your man, thinking about your job, thinking about school. Why? Because there came a point where you realize I am truly just rambling on and on and on. I'm just stringing words together, and they're beginning not to make too much sense, you know. And so what happens when you begin to lose the pleasure aspect of the conversation, pain sets in. You may not be completely aware of it, boredom sets in. And then you begin to think about things that have nothing to do with us or you being here. You wander off, you begin to fantasize. So whenever something is giving you pleasure, and it's relatively intense and exciting, thinking will never happen unless the pleasure is slowly beginning to fade, and say, don't let it go away. You know, it's like a candle slowly going off. You say, okay, what do I need to do to make sure it stays on for another 5 hours? Okay. You will always, always, always think when you have pain, because pain puts you in a very uncomfortable position, and something about your body and something about your mind and emotion that just come out and say, fix the issue, what is going on. So in pleasure, you will never think. In the fading of the pleasure, thinking will start. Okay. In pain, you will always think. Always. Now, some pains can be good, some pains can be bad. It depends how well you can process them. You know, if you have the pain of having cancer, and then the pain of perhaps thinking about your own mortality, i.e. death, then that pain, after you pass a few stages, it turns into you giving life lessons to other people about time, about youth, about resources, about the value of health and all that stuff. So whenever you start thinking about things, forgive me for using this example. Let's say that just before getting to the house, your boyfriend called and said, I'm in Oakland, I had a meeting. How about if I take you to a Persian restaurant called Ali Baba? You say, hold on, let me park the car, I need to think about this. So here you are, comfortably driving to the house. All of a sudden, you have an intruder, calling you. And now what happens is, first he says, you're looking forward to coming here, okay? Because you know that your man is in Nebraska. And all of a sudden, he says, I'm here. You say, oh, I actually miss him today. And then you say, okay, should I go to Amir's or should I go to Abdullah's? And then a couple of things can happen. You can all of a sudden just call me and say, Amir, I'm not feeling too well. I think I just need to go home and rest. I've been coughing all day. You know, I don't have a camera seeing where you are, what you've done, what's been happening to you. So I say, well, Genin, yeah, it's best for you not to come because, you'll get people sick, especially Jackie, and that would not be proper. And then, of course, you go to your boyfriend. You guys have a good time. But while you're there, and it's fun to see him, you kind of see, you hold your hand, you hold each other's hands, you go for a walk. And as you're overlooking the ocean, and it's dark and the birds are flying and they're singing the sad song, and you say, "The hell am I doing with this guy? I should have gone, to Amir's house." And then you kind of look at your boyfriend and say, "Abdullah." For some strange reason, I'm not feeling too well. I'm really, really sorry. I just need to go home and like throw up. I'm getting like ocean sickness. And he says to you, "Well, let me come with you. I'll take care of you." You say, "No, Abdullah. You go back to San Jose. You take care of yourself. You have a meeting tomorrow." And, you say, "Well, I've spent like 10 minutes with him. That was enough." Slowly you begin, it gets boring, and then... So that's how thinking happens. The pleasure of, for example, you sitting on the sofa and watching a good movie after a hard day's of work. That's great. And all of a sudden, say, Cassie texts you and says, "I was just thinking about our conversation last night. Thank you, it was good to see you." And just seeing that text from Cassie ruins you just being able to relax watching the movie, You say, "God damn it." So you get yourself up, you go sit behind the computer, and you read the sad literature by, I don't know, Jane Austen or by Rumi, about how pathetic human beings are who sit and lay on the sofa and watch TV. So Cassie, you're having fun. Cassie makes you think, and in thinking you feel guilty and ashamed, and then you come out and you're reading the Gospel of John. It makes you feel crappy, but you enjoy it. You actually, So, the more people you have in your life who make you feel bad about yourself, destroy your fun, i.e. pleasure, give you pain, and force upon you reflection, it's really good. Consider evolution for a moment. You find yourself naked in the middle of nowhere. If it's hot, you want somewhere cool. If it's cold, you want somewhere hot. And then you have to think about ways to keep your flesh either cold or warm. And then you see, the place out there as dangerous. You walk on rocks and your feet begin to bleed. That's painful. So you begin to say, okay, how can I protect, my feet? Then sometimes you sit and you eat alone. I don't know at what stage people begin to kind of self-reflect and say, "I'm really lonely, I need to find myself a companion." Those days they used to call it a pet. I need like a pet woman, or I need a pet man. Today it's like a pet dog or a pet cat, but that's how it started, And so... But I do think at a certain stage that you become very, very, very clear getting what kind of emotions you want in your life that you're willing to entertain. And then what kind of networks of thoughts or thinking you want to be engaged in. This is very, very, very important. I shared with you last week that we wanted to send Sophia to a piano teacher, right? And she says to us, "How old is she?" We say, "Well, she's like 2. She says, "Well, a 2-year-old can't even walk. You want me to teach her piano?" She says, "Yes, I think our child is a genius." Well, what has she done to demonstrate geniusity? If it's a word, So, well, my daughter says gaga maga, like baby boss, you know. I says, well, no, that's actually a sign of being stupid. There is no genius there, you know. And she says, I no longer have the capacity. I no longer have the capacity to sit with a 5-year-old and teach her piano. It's too much on my body, on my emotions, on my intellect. I'd like to go after, shoot myself, you know. And she gets there when she's like around 45. So the point is, right now, you know, you kind of put yourself in the zoo. You hang out with this person, hang out with that person, you entertain this book, you entertain that movie, and you're still raw, unseasoned. There comes a point where you say, you know, I only want my senses, my body, to be in an environment where people look a certain way. They have a certain facial expression. I don't want to see them smile too much. I don't want to hear them say stupid things too much. Okay? I'm too old for that. If I wanted to see people laugh and say stupid things, I would lay on the sofa and watch Seinfeld show. Okay? I don't want to like be like spending my time with people, live people in that way. Do you see? Because if you invite the wrong people, then you'll have negative emotions. And then you have to kind of employ your brain resources trying to figure out what to do with these negative emotions. And these emotions are the result of other people in your life. You'll come to a place where you say, you know, it's like dating. It really is like dating. You no longer want to date certain emotions. You no longer want to date certain thought patterns. I like sad people, but they need to be sad in a specific way. I like to hear people talk, but they need to have a specific kind of conversation. I enjoy hearing people's reflection on things, but not about how to make money. At least not Thursday nights. You know? And until you're able, until you have the power yourself to kind of put your body in a very specific environment, be around a very specific group of people, okay? You need to have some sort of an awareness as to, should I go with Abdullah or should I go here? What sort of emotions do I want to have? What sort of ways of thinking do I want to be around? You know? And what's going to happen is you're going to say to yourself, you know, with Abdullah, we'll go to the ocean, we'll have some food, we'll talk, we'll laugh. When I go over there, we sit in a room, my body begins to hurt after like 4 hours. And then this guy just keeps rambling on and on about nonsense, and he kind of harasses Jackie. It's no fun, you know? I'd rather just go there. And so what'll happen is you will go with Abdullah a few times until you realize that, well, that particular life is no longer offering you anything. Okay? You've done that enough of times, and then when conflict arises, you say, I've been with Abdullah, I know the outcome of that. It's fun, then it gets really bad. When I go to that, it may be the other way around, you know. So you have no choice but to feel. You're condemned. And you have no choice but to think at the moment you feel, especially if the feelings are negative. You know. You know, you can go home tonight and you can cry. And then out of exhaustion you'll fall asleep. And then you will have a dream. And in the dream, let's say Lao Tzu comes and pays you a visit. And it's a dream you've never had. It's an experience you've never had. And everything about you is excited when you wake up. And you're joyous. But keep in mind that this dream that caused you a lot of joy was founded on your weeping just a few hours ago. That joy that does not require any thinking is founded on sadness that pushed you to weep. Okay? Some pleasures just push you into forgetfulness and stupidity. Those are not the kind of fun you want to have, where your thinking just gets suspended. So when we say, for example, that in joy, in pleasure, your thinking is always suspended, it's true, but you need to also pay attention to what sort of joy or pleasure you want in your life. It's always good to have your joy linked to sadness. Always. And I think you've experienced this when you sit and you talk to your companion about the saddest thing in reflections that take you deep somewhere, and you begin to talk about this mystery or this puzzle with him, and both of you are engaged, you know, and there's a different kind of intimacy there. You know, both of you are confused, both of you are perplexed, both of you are sad, both of you are angry, but it's rooted in both of you delving into the mysteries of life. You know, there is this and you guys know the story better than I because you've read it. It's about this dervish just being very happy, this other dervish being very sad, temperamentally. So the happy dervish goes to the sad dervish and says, "Let's switch. I'll give you my happiness and you give me your sadness." Fine. So the dervish who was sad is now happy, sings and dances and laughs and all that. The dervish who was happy now becomes sad. Morning comes, the dervish who was sad but borrowed happiness goes to the other guy and says, "I want my sadness back." You know, happiness is fun, there's nothing wrong with it, but sadness just connects me to some mystery I can't explain. I want it back. And the guy says, "Well, can I at least keep it for one more day?" He says, "No. Please, no." And so, you know, and there has been this long debate in the Sufi tradition, which component is more valuable, contentment or poverty? In poverty, you're always praying, you're always sad. In contentment, you have resignation, you have submission. You know, which is better to have? To be a beggar and always be seeking and always being discontent and always being hungry for yet another experience of the spirit, or always be content? You know, there's a good amount of thinking involved in poverty. There is only resignation, acceptance. They both do generate a good amount of feelings and emotions, you know. You know, one of the problems I think with your question that I have is I'm very selfish when it comes to certain things. I only like specific kinds of emotions or feelings. I like a specific kind of thinking. You know? So if you have the longing that Plato had for Socrates, whatever it is you're thinking about, it's rooted in the longing. It's a specific kind of longing, not Romeo for Juliet, but for Plato, for Socrates. That is a good feeling to have and to talk about and explore. That's a good way of thinking, you know, the anatomy of thinking, where you want to kind of break open and see what's inside. I don't much care about, you know, I feel bad about my job, and I feel bad about my husband, and I feel bad about this. Well, fine, Adam, what do you want to do? You know, you feel bad, okay, get out, divorce your husband. Well, I can't do that. Well, be quiet then. You know, there is no resolution to these things. It's just a lifelong struggle. So perhaps it was my mistake, and I rambled on. I should have asked, what kind of feelings are you talking about? What kind of thinkings are you talking about? You know. You should always be around Lao Tzu or Jesus. Read Tao Te Ching, read the Gospels, read the Analects, because they're going to inspire certain kinds of feelings and emotions, and those are good to have. And then when you leave the book and you go into your work, conflicts will begin. And then you'll begin to think, should I stay at Kaiser or should I quit? You're an instructor, you're a professor now, you walk into a classroom, you've just read a few passages from some book, and you have to deliver a presentation to your students. What are you going to do? You're going to plagiarize? Or you're going to have the spirit of Tao inside you? You know, and that's a good feed, that's a good conflict to have. It pushes you into very, very difficult and painful places where you have to confront yourself and you say, okay, Ginning, what do you want to do with these students of yours? Do you just want to give them a talk? Do you really want to be like other instructors, or do you want to go in there and be on fire because you feel something about this stuff yourself? You know. And even if you fail and you are walking back to your office with a good amount of reflection and regret, you know, they push you hopefully to become better, and they'll not kind of push you towards saying, well, this is who I am, I just have to accept the fact that I just teach this way. Either way, it's okay, don't get me wrong. I think at the end of the day, it's good that any job will be able to pay your rent, you know.